How did your parents fail you? My dad missed my graduation because of a job interview. At least, that's what Mom told me. For weeks, she kept assuring me he'd be there. He wouldn't miss this, she said. You know how important this is to him? I wanted to believe her. I really did. Because despite everything, there was still a small part of me that remembered the dad he used to be. The dad who taught me how to ride a bike. The dad who spent entire Saturdays building blanket forts in the living room. The dad who pushed me on the swings until sunset and pretended not to hear Mom calling us home for dinner. Back then, he never missed anything. Then work happened. At first it was small. A missed dinner here, a late night there. Then came the cancelled weekends, the forgotten promises. The constant phrase that became the soundtrack of my childhood. I'm sorry, buddy, work came up. When I was 7 years old, he promised he'd come to my soccer championship. I scored the winning goal. Every kid on the field immediately ran toward their parents. I remember searching the crowd, looking for him. He never showed. Mom sat alone in the bleachers, clapping harder than anyone else. Afterward, she bought me ice cream. She kept trying to distract me. I never touched it. By the time I was 12, I stopped asking if Dad would come. By 16, I stopped expecting him to. And by 18, I had become an expert at pretending. It didn't bother me, but graduation was different. This wasn't just another event, this was the event. The one I'd spent years working toward. The one every parent talks about, the one every kid imagines. And somehow, despite everything, I convinced myself he'd be there. The morning of graduation, Mom was taking pictures non-stop. She adjusted my gown at least 20 times. Dad had already left for his interview. Before walking out the door, he stopped beside me. For a moment he looked like he wanted to say something. Instead, he simply placed a hand on my shoulder. I'm proud of you. Those four words should have meant something. Instead, all I could think was, then be there. The ceremony began. Rows of students filled the auditorium. Families packed every seat. People held flowers, balloons, signs with names written in giant letters. Everyone seemed to have an entire cheering section. Every few minutes, I checked my phone. Nothing. I scanned the audience. Nothing. I checked the doors every time they opened. Still nothing. As the principal droned on about our future, hope slowly transformed into dread. Then my name was called. The room erupted in applause. I walked across the stage, shook hands, accepted my diploma, smiled for the cameras, and felt completely empty. Everyone seemed to have an entire cheering section. Every few minutes, I checked my phone. Nothing. I scanned the audience. Nothing. I checked the doors every time they opened. Still nothing. As the principal droned on about our future, hope slowly transformed into dread. Then my name was called. The room erupted in applause. I walked across the stage, shook hands, accepted my diploma, smiled for the cameras, and felt completely empty. Her eyes filled with tears. Mine stayed dry. I was too angry to cry. At the graduation party later that afternoon, things only got worse. Every relative asked the same question. Where's your dad? Mom kept inventing new excuses. Traffic, work emergency, car trouble, meeting ran late. Every answer sounded weaker than the last. I watched people nod politely while clearly not believing her. One of my friends eventually pulled me aside. You okay? I laughed, a bitter laugh. He missed my championship game. My friend stayed silent. He missed my debate finals, still silent. He missed my 18th birthday. I took a sip of soda. So honestly, this is pretty on brand. The words felt good in the moment. Like finally admitting something I'd carried for years. But underneath the sarcasm was a pain I couldn't get rid of. After everyone left, the house became unbearably quiet. I sat alone in my room staring at my diploma. The piece of paper I'd worked so hard for. The piece of paper that suddenly felt meaningless. Mom knocked softly. Can we talk? No, please. I stood up, grabbed my keys. Save it. Her face fell. I've heard it all before. Then I left. I drove without thinking. The roads were empty. Streetlights blurred past my windows. Eventually, I found myself parked outside my old elementary school. The playground was deserted. I walked over to the swings, the same swings Dad used to push me on. Back before deadlines and meetings swallowed him whole. Back before work became the center of his universe. I sat there for nearly an hour, remembering, hurting, getting angrier, every missed game, every broken promise, every empty seat, every excuse. By the time I stood up, I was shaking. Not from sadness, from rage. I pulled out my phone, opened our text thread, and typed, "Congrats on showing me exactly where I rank on your priority list." I stared at the message, then hit send. Message delivered. No response, of course. I drove home shortly after midnight. For a moment, I considered sleeping somewhere else. A friend's house, my car, anywhere. But when I pulled into the driveway, I noticed something. Dad's car, for the first time all day. His car was finally home. Part of me wanted to ignore it, go straight to bed. Instead, I walked inside. The kitchen light was on. Mom sat at the table. Her eyes were swollen from crying. Dad sat beside her. At first I barely recognized him. He looked years older than he had that morning. His tie was gone. His shirt was wrinkled. Dark circles hung beneath his eyes. Papers covered the table. Bills, applications, bank statements, folders. He looked up. For a second, neither of us spoke. Then he quietly said, "I'm sorry I missed your graduation." I crossed my arms, waiting, expecting, preparing for another excuse, another explanation, another disappointment. Instead, he slid a folder toward me. His hands were trembling. Inside was a rejection letter, dated that morning. The company had selected another candidate. I looked up. Dad stared at the table. Mom finally spoke, her voice barely audible. "Your father lost his position 6 months ago." I blinked. "What? He never told you?" The room felt suddenly smaller. "He wanted you focused on school." Dad swallowed hard. "The layoff started last winter." Everything stopped. The layoffs, the late nights, the missed dinners, the weekend shifts, the exhaustion. Suddenly all of it looked different. "We're 3 weeks away from losing the house," Mom whispered. I felt my stomach drop. Dad hadn't been working late, not always. Sometimes he'd been driving for Uber. Sometimes delivering food. Sometimes attending networking events. Sometimes interviewing. Anything to keep us afloat. The stack of papers suddenly made sense. Applications, hundreds of them. Rejection after rejection. Month after month. Dad rubbed his eyes. I thought this interview would change everything. Nobody spoke. I begged them to reschedule. His voice cracked. They wouldn't. Mom reached for his hand. He continued staring at the table. I sat in their lobby for 4 hours afterward. I listened silently. They kept saying someone would come talk to me. His eyes grew distant. I thought that was a good sign. Another pause. Eventually security told me the hiring manager had already left. The room was completely silent. By then my graduation had been over for hours. Dad laughed bitterly, one short laugh. The kind that comes from someone who's too exhausted to cry. I miss the interview. We lose the house. His voice cracked. I attend the interview. He looked at me. I miss your graduation. For the first time all night, I didn't know what to say. Later, while looking for aspirin in the bathroom, I found something else. A pawn shop receipt. At first I thought it was random. Then I saw the item description. Watch. My grandfather's watch. The one Dad treasured more than anything. The watch he'd worn every day of my life. The watch he'd promised would someday be mine. I found him in the living room, holding the receipt. His face immediately told me everything. "You pawned it," he sighed. "We needed money." "For what?" He hesitated. Then smiled weakly. "Your graduation gift." I couldn't speak. That watch was one of the last things he had from his father. And he'd given it up. For me. The next morning I woke up early. The house was quiet. I walked into the kitchen. Dad was asleep at the table, his laptop still open. Job applications covered the screen. I checked the browser. 17 applications submitted overnight. 17. After everything. After the rejection. After missing my graduation. After losing his last opportunity. He still hadn't quit. His phone buzzed. A notification appeared. Application received. "Thank you for your interest." I stared at him, really stared at him. And for the first time in years, I didn't see the man who missed my games. I didn't see the man who forgot birthdays. I didn't see the man who wasn't there. I saw a man drowning, a man carrying a burden so heavy he couldn't even share it with his family. A man sacrificing pieces of himself every single day to keep a roof over our heads. A man who had slowly disappeared because he was fighting battles I never knew existed. That didn't erase the hurt. It didn't magically replace the memories. It didn't give us back all those missed moments, but it changed something. Because sometimes the people who hurt us aren't choosing between us and something else. Sometimes they're choosing between two impossible losses. That evening, I sat beside him at the kitchen table. For a while, neither of us spoke. Then I slid one of the job applications closer. Need help? Dad looked at me. His eyes filled instantly. Neither of us mentioned the graduation. Neither of us mentioned the interview. We didn't have to. Because for the first time in years, we were finally sitting on the same side of the table. He failed me by missing my graduation, but the world failed him even worse. He sacrificed the one moment he could never get back ... and got nothing in return, except a son who finally understood.